welcome back to the Personality Hacker Podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we're coming to you live today with a fantastic studio audience in Atlanta, Georgia. We have people from all over. Obviously, we've got people here from Atlanta and Georgia and the South of the United States. But we also have people from as far away as California, all over the U.S. And we're really excited to have you all here in person. One of the passions that we have is to bring personality type more alive in our lives, make it more visceral, make it more real. And by coming to a live event, it's a great opportunity for you in this audience here to come and be part of a community of like minds, share ideas, open up questions, and really make this something that is impacting your day-to-day existence, not just something you theorize about or read online, but it's something that's very real for you. So I really appreciate everybody being here. Today, we want to talk a little bit about this idea of being our full selves, right, Antonia? So I am noticing more and more in the world that a lot of people that are very smart people, very creative people, maybe they even were an outgoing person at one time. They had a lot of energy to give to the world. They're throttling a little bit. They're kind of resisting giving their full self. I don't know exactly what's causing it. Maybe it's society, maybe it's some social conditioning. I think it's a lot of social conditioning personally. I think it's a lot of people that are, they're looking at the cues of society and going, I don't know, I'm uncertain. And so I don't know if I put myself out, I give the gifts that my personality and my essence brings to the world. If I put that out there, is it going to be rejected? Is it going to be punished? Is it going to be stomped on? Is it going to be received well? And maybe you tested it and you got a little bad feedback and you pull back. So I think that may be one of the things going on, but I thought what we could do today is workshop some of that with everybody here, tune into your lives and find out where maybe you feel a little throttled or stifled or pulling back from. And we can talk about it together, but let's open this up and talk about it from this perspective, Antonia.
Yeah, I think we get socialized out of our personality types from a lot of different quarters. I don't think it's just society. I think it actually usually starts at home. There's a concept called the Pygmalion Project where we have a tendency when we're in partnerships to fall in love with somebody and all the things that are different from us. And then when we get in the relationship or a relationship with them, we immediately start trying to make them more like us, right? We start trying to carve them into this perfect version of what we think that they should be to match our expectations of them. And they call it the Pygmalion Project, right? Trying to craft or sculpt this perfect person. But I think we end up doing Pygmalion projects on our kids. I think we end up doing it on people in our lives that are close to us and that we have influences on. And it happens to us. We end up sort of doing it to other people because a lot of times it was done to us. And so I believe that one of the reasons why we end up stifling or throttling our personality types is because somebody at home was not super happy about how our type preferences showed up. And it could be that maybe we were too high energy for them and they needed a calmer energy. So not intending, to snuff our light out, they just repeatedly said, calm your energy down, as opposed to training us in ways to sort of Aikido our energy maybe into other things. The energy is still there, but now it's manifesting in a different way. But instead of doing that, we just go calm your energy down. Or the opposite. Maybe we are naturally more introverted or have a calmer energy. And it's like, well, what's wrong with you? Why don't you want to go socialize more? Why don't you want to go make friends? What's happening? And so then we just get this message that whatever it is we're doing is not the right thing. We're supposed to be doing something different. And there's something I've heard from multiple different quarters now. We're talking about it today in our Personality Life Path program, where if there is a contest between being true to ourselves and in integrity with ourselves and making our caretakers happy, we lose every time, right? We will betray our identity and ourselves in favor of our caretakers every time because our caretakers represent life to us, right? If we, for some reason, if they're not happy with us or they reject us when we're little, that means literal death. And so we end up self-betraying, and then we get habituated into self-betrayal. And a part of that, I think, isn't entirely wrong because we start out as feral little creatures and we have to be socialized. And so there's something to be said for not being able to just do whatever our impulses tell us. Like there is something to be said for being more introverted and having people help us come out of our shell, or maybe being high energy and learning how to throttle it a little bit and figure out different ways of managing that energy. But it's when we get the message that it's not simply that we need to learn better ways of interfacing. It's when we get the message that whatever we are naturally, however we're natively wired, it's just unacceptable. It's just wrong somehow, and you need to change it. Which, of course, is something we can't do. Right? We're pre-wired to be focused on certain things. We're pre-wired to have an expression of ourselves. So if we get the message that that's just wrong, then we end up stifling, repressing, turning it into something that's a mutated version of its original form. And a lot of times the crazy thing is we can go a long time doing that. Like maybe an impressively long amount of time. But there's that phrase that life finds a way. So particularly when it comes to our most native cognitive functions in type theory, right? The things that are the most natural to us, maybe our first or dominant or what we call the driver function in the car model, maybe our auxiliary or co-pilot function, or any of the first four functions. If we can't express them, they will find a way to express, but they end up being like weeds coming through a concrete jungle, right? They find all the cracks. The challenge is that they're never what they could have been. They're just trying to find a way to get out. So we see evidence in those moments that weed, that's me, that's my true self, but it doesn't look like it could have looked. It's not in a garden that beautifies it. It's not in a context that makes it the best gift that it could be. It's just this sort of, it's this breath of expression. And I think one of the reasons why we become so attracted to type, a lot of us, is it's the first time that people describe our native wiring in a way that we resonate. And it gives us permission to be wired in that way. It's the first time we go, oh, I'm not broken. Oh, I'm not wrong. You mean that there are other people like me? You mean this is a valid thing? And so we get this hope, right? This hope that it's okay to be the way that we're pre-wired to be. And then we can go off on a mission to find ourselves more and more, to create what we call an ergonomic life for those type preferences, to change our context, to make it so that we accept ourselves more, to make it so that our life is more accommodating to our type preferences. But it depends on just how suppressed they were. It depends on how long we've been spending trying to sort of contort ourselves to expectations. If we've gone a really long time, sometimes it just takes a while to even figure out what that native language is, to find our way. And if we've already established a life based on the preferences of others, based on how we were told we're supposed to be, it can take a long time to unravel that life and put it back together. It takes a long time. Yeah. So it's not necessarily a make wrong. Like, I don't think our parents are necessarily, or the society is necessarily trying to break us. I don't think it's trying to do anything to us. And we're not bad and wrong for letting it change us to some extent, because everybody's sort of doing the best they can. But when we get to that point, when we realize what our type preferences are, part of the psychology of tamping ourselves down is finding permission to do the opposite. So even if you find your type preferences, even if you discover what your native wiring is, now you have to give yourself permission. All that other stuff I said, which is find yourself and create an ergonomic lifestyle for yourself, that comes after giving yourself permission to be that thing at all. That comes after making peace with it, not just getting excited by the description, but going, no, this is game-changing material. This is something I can actually do something about. Joel, before the podcast, mentioned making personality type come alive. And that's really what it means to make it come alive, is to let it have an impact. Allow it to be the new thing that doesn't like shape you and craft you like it's molding you, but allows you to grow and emerge into it. Like an outfit that was tailored for you, but you've never worn before, right? And to find all of these opportunities and give yourself permission to have something that's tailored for you. Sometimes when we do that, it feels weird. If we're used to wearing clothes that are slightly ill-fitting, when we wear something that's tailored to us, it feels really good, but it's almost like it's too good to be true, right? And sometimes creating a lifestyle that matches our type preferences can feel the same way. It's almost too good to be true and it's wrong somehow. So I think the concept of suppression and throttling and sort of the dynamics around all of that, I think it's a pretty relevant conversation for a lot of people into type theory, because I think that piece of learning type, but then getting to the ergonomic lifestyle, there's all these steps in between. And that's, I think, actually the dialogue. That's the conversation, is all the steps between awareness and finally being able to express in a way that feels fully authentically you.
So our daughter, Piper, at the time of this recording, right now is 11 years old. And I'm seeing her on the cusp of just exiting this very free-spirited, just probably EFP preferences as far as type goes.
At this point, I suspect ESFP.
Probably ESFP. Mm-hmm. And she's very dynamic. She's very free. Like nothing bothers her. People could be critical toward her. People could she just rolls with it. I love it. Now she's on the cusp of, her transition years from childhood to teenager years. And we all know how those go because we've all been through them, right? So I know what's coming for her. But right now, watching her in such a beautiful, just expressing what makes sense to her, such a freedom to express. And we try not to stifle it, right? We try to give her the nurture and the guidance and the opportunities to express the way she wants to express. Now, our job as parents is to prepare her for the real world. So we do socialize her. We give her, okay, you can't just do that at the dinner table, that kind of thing, right? We have to kind of curate her growing up experience, guide her to be able to be a proper adult and be able to interface with other people. But I love the fact that she's been able to express so freely. And she's so inspiring to me to watch just how much she sees something and she's like, I just want to go out and roll in the grass, or I want to climb that tree, or I want to play with my cat. And it just is so inspiring to see how free and how unfettered she is. I'm like, I want more of that in my life. Why do I feel so stuck and trapped and dense? Wouldn't it be wonderful? And all of us probably as children have had at least moments where we tuned into that part of ourselves. It was where we could play. We didn't have to have a purpose. We didn't have to always be on all the time. We didn't have to be, all this pressure to conform or do this thing or, I can't show people that part of myself. We've had this part of ourselves in some way probably familiar to us. So as we talk about going through the process of becoming unstifled or unrestricted, I don't know if it's really something we have to go discover new. It's probably more of a reclamation process of something that once was, right? It's getting past all the crap we've globbed on ourselves. It's like removing all of that, getting back down to more of who we really are, the more essence of how we move through the world. So I don't know if it's like, it can be a lot of hard work. It can be like, I got to go through all this personal growth work or personality type understanding work and really understand how this is influencing me. It could be deep and dark and hard and difficult, but some of us, it may not have to be that much. It could just be like letting go. And like Antonia said, giving yourself permission to be able to step into that version of you that feels, can you imagine? I mean, just imagine yourself right now going through the world and not having to care about all those things so much, right? You can be more relaxed. You don't have to like be on and all the is everybody gonna be okay with what I'm doing, what I'm acting? Can I still talk to that person and be mad at me? Can I just emote the way I want to emote? Can I cry in public and no one judge me? Or if they do, I don't care because I'm just free. I'm a free agent. I'm free in this world and I can live what makes sense to me. And obviously not hurting anybody, being a reasonable adult, but imagine yourself being in that state. You probably have a sense of yourself. If you think about it, what a free version of me look like? What would a more unrestricted version of me, bringing myself to the world, look like? Maybe tune into that for just a moment. Get a sense of it. What would that version of yourself feel like? Would you feel good about it? Would you be like, yeah, that feels really good. I love the fact that I can act in this way and bring my full essence to something. And obviously it's going to be different for each of us because we're all wired differently. Some of us are introverts and that won't look like my version of it, right? Mine's going to be very different than maybe an INFJ's version of unstifledness. So whatever that means for you and how you're wired, that's also important, clearly. And that's why we talk about personality types.
I think we should get some questions from the audience.
Sure. Okay. So now it's time for you to get involved. Who has something maybe want to come and share or ask a question around? Who'd like to do it? Yes. Come on up. Give her a hand, everyone. All right. So what is your name?
My name is Denise McGill.
And your best fit type preferences?
So I've just discovered with Antonia and others here that my type is INFP.
Oh, cool. And where are you from?
Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay, South Carolina. So what did you want to talk about? What did you have?
Well, so you talk in your podcast a lot about the future. Personally, I feel like the present is pretty chaotic, but you guys say like there's generational transition coming, and AI is everywhere and going to be even more everywhere. So my question is, as a Gen X INFP, where do I fit? I want to be brave, but I like a lot of it just makes me want to crawl into my turtle shell.
Yeah.
What's scary about it? Why does it want to make you crawl into your turtle shell?
Well, I've heard you say things about like the Gen Xers need to step up and take leadership.
Yeah.
And I mean, other people are getting old, and it really hasn't occurred to me at all that like I'm next in line.
It almost feels like I'm a Gen Xer too. It almost feels
Right.
like, wait, I'm the adult now? Like
Exactly.
I'm in the adult leadership position. What? Like that's a shock, I think, to a lot of us Gen Xers because we were ignored for so long and there was nothing really expected of us.
We could just fly under the radar and do
Yeah.
our thing.
So we talk about getting unstifled or putting yourself out there. It's almost like this. Well, what I hear, it's almost like it's a surprise that that's even an option or that, oh, this is the time in my life to do it. It doesn't sound as scary as it sounds surprising to you, maybe.
Well, I think I've like kind of just figured out my type, which is amazing and great, but also like I'm feeling like I'm having to get adjusted to, the new me. And like, I feel like I'm like repairing the airplane as it's flying through the air.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you feel like there has been, I mean, to segue the conversation around stifling and then the topic of, well, then how do I step into, right? The
Yeah.
expectation, maybe like we've been taught. I mean, it's not our theory, it's generational theory. We
Right.
think it's interesting. We don't know if it's true, but it's fascinating to, at least me, it's fascinating to me. But this idea that regardless of whether or not generational theory is accurate, we are getting of an age where we are next, right? In line for leadership. So has it felt like times in the past you wanted to take leadership, but you throttled yourself or you didn't feel qualified or you didn't feel like others around you would accept it?
A big issue is that I mistyped myself for so long, and that I was like trying to do my thing, but it wasn't fitting, and I wasn't very effective at it. And that, other people around me were noticing that. And so I think I was throttling myself like, oh, I don't want to be noticed. And I'm scared of making mistakes in public. And so I'm feeling like, yeah, okay, I can like try, do this better. But like, oh my gosh, now everything is changing. And oh my gosh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when you have, when you've had that recently happen, particularly for somebody with INFP preferences, I mean, one of the big challenges to finding one's best fit type is that there's a little bit of like, don't I know myself well enough to be able to find it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why sometimes it's hard to not place our ego into our type quest or like being the journey of finding one's best fit type, because we should know ourselves. We forget that it's also knowing the system.
Plus, like, I'm a Gen Xer. Like, the end is out there somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not just out there. Like, it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think I'm going to speak to the Gen X part even more so than the type part. Although my observation has been that the extroverted thinking or effectiveness part of an INFP, the desire for leadership, the desire to help guide and lead something sneaks up on INFPs. Right.
I would say in my particular case, like I've tried to step into leadership and it's not gone very well.
Mm-hmm.
So on a lot of things, I know I'm just gun shy,
right.
But I want to be brave.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So the concept of Gen Xers stepping into leadership is the quality that comes along with that generation, as I understand it, is there's a certain practicality. It's more about like the leadership style of Gen X is more about practical solutions, trying to not be so idealistic. We're sandwiched between two generations, baby boomers and millennials, that both are fairly idealistic. Boomers as the archetypal energy of a prophet, which is I speak something out and it happens around me. Now, a lot of baby boomers don't know that one of the reasons why that worked for so long is because Gen Xers were right underneath them, and we're a practical generation that just kind of makes things happen and we patch it all together. And so baby boomers kind of have this idea of like, well, if I speak it, it happens, right? And they're not 100% sure how that all works. They just know that it works, right? And then on the other side are the millennial generation that has the archetypal energy of a hero. And they're designed to take on a lot, to be really hyper-focused on making sure that we all get through it. And in the vernacular of this hero generation of the millennial is saving the world, right? And so there's a lot of idealism around saving the world and making sure that we have an impact on the world, right? But it's real big. Like the concepts are big and the stakes are big and
abstract.
It's really abstract. It's like, how does one save the, I mean, as a Gen Xer, I'm like, you can't save the world, right? But millennials are like, what? Of course you can save the world. And it's like, no, you can't. I'm sorry. But both of those things need to be represented. The millennial take of like, yes, but we have to try. Yes, you're right. We do have to try. We have to do everything we can to make it so that in generational theory, when we enter what's called the next saculum, which is effectively an 80 to 100 year span of a value set, a time period that will be marked by who knows what in the future. When we enter that time period, we're going to need the hero energy to make sacrifices, to care about people, to make sure that communities are, not neglected or ignored. All of that energy is great. And we're going to also need the baby boomer energy of the prophets, which are helping guide sort of the values and virtues and figuring all that stuff out. But we're also going to need the Gen Xers in the middle going, and then we should also repair the bridges maybe. Right? Maybe we should also do this thing over here that's super practical that everybody's ignoring because it's not fun. So I think Gen X leadership to some extent is, I think of it as programming our parents' VCR, right? You walk into a room and the 12 is flashing on the VCR. None of the young people know what I'm talking about, but the 12 is flashing and it's like, and everybody's like trying to figure it out and you're just like, get out of the way, right? And then like you hit a couple buttons. You've never seen this thing before, but you hit a couple buttons, it's like, there, it's fixed, right? And then you walk into your room, they're like, slacker. So the energy we bring is the energy that is willing to not just feel overwhelmed by the buttons, but figure the buttons out and make sure that the 12 isn't flashing anymore. And Gen X leadership it's almost modeling practicality. It's modeling practical solutions and being willing to take the hits of other people going, but maybe that ignores some people, or maybe it doesn't get everybody's interests, represented or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but do you want it to work? Right. So it's bringing things from this idealistic, sort of like save the world to okay, but first we have to do this thing and then you can save the world, but let's do this thing first. Okay. It's a very practical way of leadership. Now I know if somebody with INFP preferences, you're like, that sounds awful.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. It sounds super lame. Can I be a millennial?
Can't just my Gen X friends do all that.
Right. But it's really kind of a grounding energy. And people with INFP preferences, while there is definitely the inner romantic, idealistic part, there's also a grounding energy that INFPs can have. Sort of a realism about staying true to the self in a practical way. Right. Because here's what I've observed. This is just between you and me. Okay. My observation has been that the you have to save the world message is actually a burden to millennials. It's a burden. And the expectation of everything you do has to have some sort of positive implication and everything you do has to be, for the greater good. That's actually not authentic to a lot of people in that generation. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have a place in all of it. It doesn't mean that don't still have that hero archetype energy. But there is something to be said for allowing ourselves to admit when that's not really the thing we want. Maybe I just want to have a family. Maybe I just want to go do this thing over here. Is it okay if I don't have this big activist cause? Is it okay if I just do my thing? Now I know you well enough to know that you do have, you have one of the most practical ways of communicating to the world what's really happening because you want to go ahead and say what you do for a living?
I'm a photojournalist.
That's right. I know that.
Documentary filmmaker. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as a photojournalist, there's something to be said for journalism that, modern day journalism is a lot of, it's our job to tell people what they're supposed to be talking about, Right. What?
That's not my form of journalism, just for the record.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
but
you're
yes.
practical, right?
Yes,
because you're not idealistic.
exactly.
Right? And so you go, okay, well, you guys can all be talking about, you think that you're supposed to be telling everybody what they're supposed to be talking about, but I'm going to take pictures of what is actually happening. What's actually happening. So people can make their own opinions. They can come to their own conclusions based on what they're seeing with these images. Right. For an INFP that's romantic, you certainly chose a very practical expression of that industry. Right. Yeah.
True.
And it's not necessarily telling people what they're supposed to be thinking, which is another Gen X quality, which is like you kind of get to think whatever you want to, according to Gen X. Well, not all Gen Xers. Some are very imposing. That's not all of them. But there is sort of a live and let live sense, right? But at the same time, you should be informed so that you can make better decisions. So I think the field you chose, the direction you're going, and the desire to make it grounded in reality. This is all these are forms of leadership, right? At least it's giving people the building blocks to form their own thoughts, right? And one could argue it's a form of thought leadership. So does that mean that you have to go, take on some sort of big C-level executive position, or does it mean that you have to like go get involved in local politics or whatever? I mean, you can if you want to, or you can continue doing what you're doing and finding more and more practical ways to keep people grounded so that the conversation doesn't get too abstract. It doesn't get too values without thinking about the implications of how we're talking about those values. Like we can say anything we want, but then it becomes policy. And now we get to see how the policy rolls out, right? And we get to see what it does. And we get to see that with our own eyes with photojournalism. Does this make sense? Or track?
That's really helpful.
Okay.
I also appreciate that you're newly resting into a type that is your best fit type. And so the other thing too is it sounds like you're very eager, which is great because you want to bring your full self forward, but also it's okay to take a moment just to get used to the new clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Like let yourself get used to the new clothes. And I think now that you're centered in that, I think you're also going to see other opportunities for reaching out or stepping into that more and more. But right now you are adjusting. So give yourself the space to adjust to this. You don't have to rush to output right this second because it's new. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Does it resonate?
Yes.
Okay.
The impression that lots of people have is that millennials are pretty judgmental. They like their inner circle, and anyone outside of their circle, especially older people, and this whole hey boomer, like that came from millennials. That didn't come from Gen Xers.
This is you taking leadership right now to say some truths that you need to get out. Now you might need to calibrate it.
Yes,
You can maybe
definitely
do it better.
Right.
And it's not completely true. Like I have to reflect to you that not all millennials are crap people. Like they're all
exactly.
like,
No.
Like,
so
there's a great, what I'm saying
absolutely.
Yeah, and you know that.
I work with a lot of millennials, and a lot of
some
great
of my
things
best
about
friends
them.
are millennials.
Yes. Their optimism is baffling, but then it's kind of contagious. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I think you're demonstrating exactly the thing that you need to be able to be. And I think it's just an act of calibration. Like you actually don't want to dismiss a whole generation. I feel.
Absolutely. I mean, whoa.
Right?
I feel like they're feeling like they're ready to like take leadership.
Yeah.
But
and
I would be willing
Denise,
to have them.
Like, you're at an age with lots of you have a lot of skill, a lot of your, competence coming with, you're not going to get kicked off to the side and have no place. And in fact, there is a place for you to help guide and lead and curate and teach, but maybe not in the format that you've done it in the past. That's, I guess what I'm saying is things might alter and change. You might have to do it differently. It might be coming up to a microphone like this on a podcast more than teaching a class somewhere, right? There might be other ways that you're going to lead and step up. And I think that a lot of young people would appreciate teaching and guidance and leadership. I don't think they're all rejecting it. And I think there's almost like a sense sometimes well, if no one's going to do this, I have to. But if there is competent leadership that steps up, I think people rest into that. I think people love the certain leader who says, I think this is how we need to go forward. And so I think you're demonstrating the very leadership that you're going to be bringing. It's just a matter of developing it, just guiding it, curating it, getting better at it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Have you read The Fourth Turning Is Here yet?
I haven't read it, but I'm, yes,
so
it's on my list.
Right. The book is effectively what spawned the podcast series, which is what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
And I think a couple different things have come up while you're talking. The first one is millennials, the hero generation for every version, every saculum they've been in, they have some of the biggest sacrifices to make.
Yeah.
Like the millennials are going to be sacrificing a lot coming up. And that when I was really reading about the sacrifices that they make and that they're willing to make, see this whole like idealism thing. Sometimes I'm like, okay, kids, right? I mean, even though like millennials are now in their early 40s, right? Or up to 40, but it's like, all right, guys. But there's a part of that energy that's needed in order to make the sacrifices that they make. And I don't mean their lives necessarily, but I mean like tough times might be coming up, and it's that like get together and we're all in this together energy and spirit that's going to, that energy is going to be part of like what from behind propels us forward. And leadership is more about calibrating the direction we go. So there's going to be the millennial generation is so important for bringing that energy that and there's an upbeatness about the generation. Gen Xers are not upbeat. We're not upbeat people, right? That might be one of the reasons why we're easy to forget and ignore, right? We're not exactly likable, you know what I mean? So that millennial...
But that's what makes us cool.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, being liked is lame. Being ignored is awesome. So, but there's that millennial energy that kind of helps boost us to the next place. And then the Gen X practicality is part of how we make sure that we establish smart policies going forward into the future. I mean, I'm seeing more and more Gen X leadership pop up. And then remind people about what our jobs really are, not the ideals, not the abstractions, not like it could be this way. And it's like, yes, but it is this way. It is this way. And if we want whatever you're talking about, then we're going to have to do these things. Well, those are distasteful. Yes, but that is the path. Yep. Right. So it's kind of a willingness to be Gen Xers bring a willingness to be disliked. We bring a willingness to be the bad guy. And
you model it. Honestly, you model it through leadership. You say, I'm willing to take the hits. And I think it inspires younger people to do the same.
Yeah, exactly. So I recommend reading the book because it gave me such an appreciation for the millennial generation. And I kind of had a bit of an attitude before too. It's easy to do, right? But and there's a part of it that's like sort of generational bias and like we're all patriotic to whatever it is that we are. And so there is a bit of that. But I think I think the book itself really talks about where all of the archetypal energies need to be, how important they are, what role they play in like wherever we go next. And I just really have a profound appreciation for the millennial generation. And I think the book might help with that too. So, but it's okay to be a Gen Xer too. And a part of it is, we're not always liked. We have salty things to say and they need to be said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just say quickly for the record?
Quickly.
I actually really like millennials.
Okay.
So I was playing devil's advocate. I work with millennials a lot and I go around telling my colleagues how great they are. And yes, their dedication and beliefs and collaboration, they actually, yes, it's all great.
And most of the room is actually probably millennial. So
yes, exactly.
Hopefully they don't get you in the parking lot.
I can't see the faces of the people behind me, but yes.
Thank you, Denise. Give her a great big hand, everyone. Who's next? You got, yes. What's your name, sir?
Hello, my name is Denzel. I'm a millennial. I mean, ENFJ.
Yeah. We forgive you.
And
where are you from?
I'm from, born in Bronx, but I live in Atlanta.
You live here in Atlanta. Okay. Yeah. Fantastic.
And my question is, it's kind of an insight that I want more insight on. So as an ENFJ, I've noticed within myself, this dance of NI and SE in the middle of the stack is very interesting, at least for me. There's this aspect of me that is very boisterous and likes to have fun and do things that will just throw people off and get attention. And I think the SE and the TI combine. So I'll say something that's whoa, we would have never expected Denzel to say that. But then there's also that other aspect, with the FE and the NI, that's very calm and it's a very authentic part of me as well. And finding that balance is what was really coming up when I was listening to y'all talk about throttling. Because especially as an Enneagram 9, I have noticed growing up how much I would throttle myself in both directions. There would be times where if I was working at a certain job, then there'd be times where it's like, oh, somebody might bring up like, oh, I had this dream. And they know that like I'm reading about dream interpreting and stuff like that. And the next thing you know, I'm like, hey, maybe this is what your dream means. And I offer them some things. And the next thing you know, I hear like through the grapevines, like, oh yeah, you know, Denzel, like people are talking about how weird you are for like trying to interpret their dreams. So it's like, okay, don't bring that out. But then there's also like sides of me where it's like, okay, like maybe I start trying to become more fun and, you know, like boisterous or whatever. And then it's like, oh, that side of you is like kind of like a lot. Like we like the more sage part of you. And so it's like, okay, well, that's also a side of me as well. So throttling like both sides and like kind of like knowing like, okay, how much to bring out with one, how much to bring out with the other, and trying to, I guess, like merge them. I think that's been something that's been really showing up for me at my age. And I don't know, I just wanted to see what y'all thought about that.
Yeah.
So NI being introverted intuition, or what we call perspectives, and SE being extroverted sensing, or what we call sensation here. And those would be your co-pilot and your 10-year-old in the car model, or technically your auxiliary and your tertiary. So just to orientate anybody
Right.
who's still figuring out the shorthand. So two things are coming up for me. The first one is, do you believe you have permission to figure out how to balance these without having to do it in a way where other people approve?
Do I believe that I have permission? Probably.
Or do you have permission to balance these? To be a sage 1 minute and to be a wild and crazy guy the next minute.
Oh.
And then get the feedback of like, I like the sage or I like the wild and crazy guy. Like, do you believe you have permission, or do you have permission
Probably
to go?
not. I feel like it throws people off, like it's too inconsistent for them. And I guess I'm too aware of how they're perceiving me. So then it's like, okay, I have to be consistently this, even though in some moments I should bring this out. And so maybe not really.
So does your extroverted feeling or harmony function, your driver, does it believe that it is harming other people for them to experience you in ways that they were not expecting? Or do you believe it's discrediting you in front of others? Like what's the
problem?
actual problem?
I think the discrediting could probably be it.
Yeah.
Like in some, like the example with the insights, it's like those would be the same types of people who's like, yeah, let's not invite Denzel out to the bar after work or something like that because, you know, he's going to make everything all deep. So then it's like, okay, but then, okay, when I'm like being more outgoing, all that, which again, like isn't an actual like authentic part of me, then it's like, oh, well, now this is a lot and we like this. And it's like, which one do you guys actually want? But then also it's like, well, what do I want to present? But then, you know, with FE or harmony as a dominant function, it's like, how much of it is like, what do I want to present versus like what's fitting for the, I don't know, societal, whatever. And then, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your experience of balancing these two functions together? Like, what does it look like when you're introverted intuition or perspectives and you're extroverted sensing or sensation? When we talk about them as two sides of the same coin. What if the coin is spinning? You can kind of see both sides at the same time. What is that? Have you had that experience? What does it look like for you?
Probably. I'm pretty certain, but right now I'm blanking. I feel like it's when I'm seeing things like in the moment, like, okay, this is a lot of like what's going on right now. And then from there, I'm able to be like, hey, this is what's coming. Like I can see the trajectory of what's happening and I know like the meaning of it. And then the extroverted sensing comes back in, like it's like, okay, so this is what we should do about it. Maybe that's a little bit more of what it is.
Yeah. So the other style you're talking about is like, it almost feels like a pure expression of it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I'm in this function now, or I'm in this function.
Yeah.
Usually though, we're in a kind of a combination of functions, right? It's rare when we're fully in, although that does happen too, but it's rare when we're fully in one function. We're usually kind of in a sort of a mixture of them. So, I mean, the other thing that was coming up for me is like, do you have to care about other people's opinions? Like, do you have to care that it's discrediting, that some people think you're too woo-woo and other people think that you're too wild and crazy?
I think the right answer would be no. But I think knowing, like caring about it is also what kind of makes it effective at times. And so that's also part of the balance. Like, because something that I've noticed is like, you know, a lot of people is like, yeah, I don't really care about how I'm being perceived and all of that. sometimes they can tend to be less effective in their, impact, which as a millennial, I want to impact. So, but then also, of course, like really caring too much is also its own throttle. It's cage in a way. So it goes right back to that balancing aspect that I'm looking for.
Yeah, for sure. So, can I ask you how big of an issue this is? Or is it something that you're just trying to dial in? It's just like a thing that you're noticing happening, or is it like an actual big issue for you?
I think that it's something that I'm trying to dial in on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's something that just, during the podcast, it's something that just came up.
Right.
I was like, oh yeah, this has been something that's been really big, and I've been really honing it the best that I could on my own for the past few years. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's like something colossal necessarily.
Because if it was a big thing, I think I'd have different advice than if it's a kind of just something that you're really trying to dial in and get all and master. It sounds like mastery as opposed to, because if it's a beginning phase, it's like stop caring about what other people are thinking for a time so that you can figure those things out.
Right.
But you figured a lot of this stuff out. So then it's more like I'm trying to dial it in. I'm trying to get nuanced. So I'm gonna tell you how I experience all of this with my functions, and then mileage may vary. Right? So there are times when I really enjoy a pure expression of introverted thinking or accuracy, and I'm fully there. And there are other times when I'm just fully in an extroverted feeling or harmony space with my 10-year-old or tertiary function. And
ENTP preferences.
ENTP preferences. Thank you. And I think I allow the context to help dictate which one that I'm going to enter. So if I'm in a space of pure introverted thinking or accuracy, it's usually because the context is pretty friendly to it. And if I'm in a place of pure extroverted feeling or harmony, it's usually because the context is friendly to that too. And I allow the context to help me figure that out because I don't have a hunger for either of those functions. Like I don't have needs going unmet for them. So because of that, because I give myself enough permission or enough opportunities to have all of my functions nourished, like contexts and situations where none of them are starving to come out, then I'm able to be a little bit more flexible. So if I'm in a situation where somebody goes, you're doing dream interpretation, you should allow me to, you should interpret my dream. The context is actually asking it of you. Right. So give it's okay. Right. And you're like, well, later on, somebody else found out about that. It's like, you can't do anything about that. People are going to talk. Right. And if somebody's like, you do dream interpretation and that's weird. It's like, I'm not sure what to do about like that game of telephone or, like how somebody down the line might not invite you to some place because you're the dream interpretation guy, because I don't really like, how do you do anything about that? But if the context says, I'd like to see that part of you, then you opportunistically go, cool, because I like to express that part of me. And then you're flexible to the context. And if you're in a more extroverted sensing or sensation context, then cool, you get to bring that up. And I don't think there's anything particularly for somebody with FJ preferences for being responsive to the context, right? That's what extroverted feeling does the best, is be responsive, right? To the needs of the situation. And so I believe if you ensure that all of these functions are nourished on your own terms as well, like you know where you need to go to get introverted intuition or perspectives fed, right? You have things you do, I'm assuming, right? Yeah. And you know what you need to get extroverted sensing or sensation fed, and introverted thinking accuracy, and extrovert, like all of these, if you have a way to ensure that they're all being represented in your own, like you've set those situations and circumstances up, then none of them are desperate to get out. And then you can flex and flow and play with it and allow them to sort of commingle and observe how, it's really interesting that they were sort of working in tandem with each other in that situation. Or, man, was that an intuitive moment? Or that was a really fun sensory experience. I'm super glad I had it, right? It's a little bit, life will afford you opportunities to explore all of those parts of you. And I don't think I would be too worried about it. Now, I'm not really sure how to respond to people expecting you to show up in a certain way, because it always makes me think of what Wyatt Woodsmall, somebody who was a mentor of ours a long time ago, said, which is people don't want you to change because they just figured out how to manipulate you as you are. So a little bit of it is I need you to stay consistent because I need you to stay consistent because now I know how to interface with you.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's as discrediting as it is. There's like a little bit of inscrutability there, and they're not sure what to do with that.
Yeah, that's really big.
Yeah. And so the more mature and seasoned your friends are, right? You're getting older. I'm sure your friend group is also getting older. Everybody's maturing and becoming more seasoned people. And as you get older, people are a little bit more like, we all know that we have lots of different aspects to ourselves. So we have some space to be able to observe that. We don't oftentimes, unless we are trying to manipulate others, we don't get mad at them for not being the exact person that they were when we first met. Like we allow people some space to show up differently in different contexts because we do that, right? When we know ourselves, when we're not trying to affect something, when we don't have an affectation or like what we call that overly pinned on persona. So I think you should give yourself permission to flex and flow with the context and almost be suspicious of people that need you to be too consistent. Does that?
Yeah. No,
does that track?
I think, yeah. As you were saying that, I had people in mind. And I think that's actually very helpful, especially with what you said about the maturity and and I've been curating the types of relationships that I've been wanting to have. And the ones that I most value are the ones who have been able to see both sides. And so I guess, as I've been really trying to dial this in. And that's been something that I'm just like, okay, in the context where it's not like, I don't really know the people as well or whatever, then where do I bring that in? But I think that what you said about it's okay to be responsive in that sense. And then also just understanding what the context is, which I feel like you do very well too. Like I see you as very intellectual, but then at the same time, you say a lot of crazy things and it's like, oh, okay. And you haven't lost any, credibility from me. So it's
or maybe I am all over the place. I don't know, but I've got the microphone. So
yeah. So, but no, I think that is helpful advice. So thank you.
Thank you. Give him a hand. Who's next? Who's next? Anybody else? Who else? Oh yes, over here. Come on up. Give her a hand, everyone. As she makes her way to the front. So, what is your name?
Hi, my name is Nora.
Nora. And where are you from, Nora?
I'm from California, but I live in Atlanta, Georgia now.
Cool. And what is your best fit type preferences?
INTP.
INTP. Fantastic. What was your question or comment today?
Yeah. So we were talking about that concept of throttling, and Antonia, she brought up this wonderful phrase about the weeds growing through the concrete. And that's actually kind of what I was thinking about talking about before you guys even brought it up. So I have recently felt this really serious sense of urgency and impending regret about my lifestyle, my job, finances, politics, culture, pushing me to develop my weakest parts in neglecting my strengths. So I am grateful for working on things that are my weaknesses, like navigating social norms and corporate environments where I work, but that's never going to be where my full potential is. So I'm putting all this effort into something that's going to look like weeds through concrete anyway, and at the expense of what I really love doing. So I guess my question is
which is what? What do you love doing?
Well, I don't like managing relationships. I don't particularly like putting on an image for other people.
But what do you love doing?
Okay. Sorry. Okay.
Well, she has INTP preferences. She might not have a ready answer.
Okay. So it's something you're still discovering.
Well, I was only mentioning what I don't like to emphasize what I'm doing. And it's the exact opposite of all that.
Okay.
So I really like, what I do right now, I like the function of the job itself, but not what's required to keep the job.
Okay.
So obviously I love problem solving, clean slicing. I also love being out in nature and exploring. That's what I want to do. But balancing those two things with how I have to keep, my life working, it's how do I come up with the right formula to balance it out? And I almost feel like I can't do both because it's been months, years, and I haven't found a way to do both yet.
So what I hear you saying is that even though the job that you're doing right now, you don't mind, it's all the
Correct.
ancillary things that are
Mhm.
asked of you that feel like they're chipping away,
Correct.
right? Like kind of a
Mhm.
death by a thousand cuts type of thing.
Yeah, that's the sense of impending regret that's
Okay.
coming. Yeah.
Right. And do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'll be 35 next spring.
Okay. And do you have like a career track you've been on this entire time?
No.
Okay. So a lot of people with extroverted intuition or NP preferences,
Mhm.
exploration we call it, they have a history of doing a lot of different styles of jobs.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And so it's what I'm hearing then is that it's not like you're like, well, I got my degree in this and I now have to do this thing and I've been doing it for 10 years and I realize it's the wrong thing. It's like I keep searching for the right thing and I haven't seemed to find it yet. That's closer to what it is.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
So there, I'm going to say something almost sounds contradictory to what I was saying before,
Mhm.
which is creating a lifestyle that's ergonomic to our type preferences. The opposite of that and the reality of that, or the reality of doing this is that, a lot of times we don't get to pick everything,
Mhm.
right? We don't get to choose all of it at the moment we realize it, which is why I was talking about sort of like it takes a while to untether the life and then restructure it. It takes a while. So, and then with somebody with INTP preferences, the reason why I said she might not be able to tell you is, it's introverted feeling or authenticity that knows what it's like or what it likes, right?
Mhm.
That's the function that goes, I like that and I don't like that. And I like that and I don't like that. Introvert things is like, is it interesting? I don't know what I like. I just know whether or not something's interesting, right? And so,
Yeah, that's a very interesting distinction because they're two different things.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what's interesting is with that, it's like the wand chooses the wizard. Right. It's like
Mhm.
you're just interested in whatever you're interested in and you didn't even get to decide it. But now all of a sudden you've got like 40 tabs open and you're like, it's 2:00 in the morning. You're still researching it. And you're like, why am I even caring about this thing? So that feels like not a very reliable mechanism for choosing a career path. And sometimes it takes a while to figure out what it is you're supposed to be doing in order to make an income. But the one thing you can do is what do you do with all of your discretionary time? And are you nourishing your type
Mhm.
preferences in your discretionary time?
Mhm.
So I would ask you, are you nourishing your type preferences in your discretionary time?
I mean, I don't know, but I'm going to go with probably not, or else I wouldn't be feeling this way.
Mm.
I'm just going to go with how it feels,
Mhm.
which is hard to do sometimes. But that sense of urgency is what tells me I'm not doing it.
Mm.
Yeah. As I mentioned with Denzel, I was like, are your functions nourished? If they're nourished, then they won't be so insistent to come out in inappropriate moments. So are your functions nourished? Right.
No.
Well, I would guess you're so exhausted by the end of the day. Like,
Mhm.
how the heck am I
No,
supposed to have any
literally-
time to do anything for myself?
I was just going to say
burned out.
that
Mhm.
that's where the balancing comes in because
Mhm.
I kind of know what I need to do. Maybe I don't know 100%, but let's say hypothetically, let's say I know exactly what I need to do to nourish everything. Okay, when am I going to do that?
Mhm.
Because if I'm in this environment 40 hours a week that is playing up my weaknesses, I just want to sleep
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
3 days.
Yeah.
So here's where extroverted intuition or exploration can come in and be a friend.
Mhm.
So you said that I actually like my job. It's just all the extra stuff I have to do. What have you done to pitch to the people that you work for to make it so you don't have to do those other things?
That is not an option.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a
Yeah.
situation where like the job comes with all this extra stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
And have you ever had a job or a career path that did feel like it was like, yeah, that was actually a pretty good one that like didn't feel like it pulled too much?
No.
Not yet. Okay. I don't know your life circumstances.
Mhm.
I don't know the situation you're in. I
Yeah.
don't know what you financially are obligated to.
Mhm.
There's a bunch of missing
We
pieces
don't
of
know what
information.
hasn't worked yet.
I don't know
Yeah.
what hasn't worked. I don't know
Right.
what you've tried, right? So there's a bunch of stuff here. But I will say that if you're in a context that is stripping you of nutrients, okay,
Mhm.
to a point where when you get home, you can't even feed yourself metaphorically.
Yeah.
All right. then it is the wrong context.
Yep.
Right. It just is. Right.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that you can't figure it out, and it doesn't mean you can't endure, and it doesn't mean you're not resilient. It doesn't mean you can't do it for a super long amount of time if you have to. But the question is, do you have to? Right?
Mhm.
Is it required? And what are smart, creative ways to navigate your way, not to a job that's like your dream job? Because I think we've been sold on dream jobs. We've
Oh,
been
yeah. It's
really
not
sold
real.
on this idea,
Yeah,
right?
not real.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It can be, but
I have a dream
I'm-
job. I love doing this. So it is possible,
Yeah.
but it sometimes has to be carved out.
yeah,
It's
that's not
ready-made.
something I'm like thinking about really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be radically honest. I do like what I do, but there's a lot of stuff in here that I
Well,
don't like doing.
of course.
Okay. So I wouldn't say it's a dream job. I
Okay.
would say it's really ideal and very much suits me. And I'm very lucky to have it, to be able to do all of this.
I love introverted thinking accuracy.
And there's-
It's like a bucket of cold water, right?
That's right.
No, you're right.
You don't
though.
even
You're
know
right.
what I
There's a
have to
bunch of
do.
crap you got to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
always.
not always fun. This is like
Yeah.
the dessert that we get from all the hard work we do behind the
Mhm.
scenes. So
Right.
yes, to your point.
Exactly. And so, this is the best part of it actually. And so, there is something out there that is at least neutral.
Mhm.
Okay. There's something out there that's neutral. And you might have been building a lot of career capital that
Mhm.
allows you to sell yourself into one of those jobs. So
Yep.
extroverted intuition or exploration, we've been talking about how there's like two different styles of it. Dr. Dario Nardi has come up with this concept that there's an analytic version and a holistic version. The analytic version, he calls a marketer. So basically what it means is that the analytic version of every function is more of an assertive version. It's kind of a push out energy. It's one that asserts itself into the outside world.
Mhm.
And the holistic version of every function is a more receptive energy. It's more of like receiving information and it doesn't assert itself as much. It's more of like sort of taking it in and responding to whatever the stimuli is. For extroverted intuition, he calls the analytic version the marketer version. It's the part of extroverted intuition that sells an idea to another person and gets them excited about it.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I would recommend that you consider doing, because it's very common for particularly women who have NP and especially NTP preferences to be more receptive,
Yeah.
because we're harsh and people aren't expecting us to show up the way that we're showing up. And, like you should be nicer and kinder and more compassionate and more whatever is the image in one's head. Right. And so we go, okay, I guess I have to mute all of this and make it a softer version and not be as assertive and right. And not get my hand slapped a million times. Okay. You're just shook. I don't know if this is
No, yeah.
it's resonating. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we have a tendency to not that it's not a rule, it's a trend. Okay. There's
Mhm.
plenty of NP women out there and particularly NTP women out there that have a more assertive version of the function, but it is common for us not to. And it is something that we oftentimes get socialized into. So my recommendation is to maybe start flexing that more assertive version of extroverted intuition or exploration, meaning not just find something that's interesting to you and pattern, but get good at getting other people excited about an idea,
Mhm.
right? Making it so that the job you want, you go in there and you get them excited about hiring you for it, right? Selling yourself, selling the idea, getting other people excited, sort of carbonating how they feel about you taking these positions. And I can't make any guarantees, but my observation has been that NPs that are on fire can get people pretty excited about things, right? Make it feel like it was their idea. And if you can find a context like that, again, you don't have to have the dream job. You just have to have something that's not taking so much from you,
Mhm.
right? And if you can find that neutral space, then with your discretionary time, you can pursue all of those things that are really nourishing your type preferences. Does that track?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's my recommendation. Try to lean into a more analytic, assertive marketer, get other people excited about ideas version of that function.
So you're talking about persuasion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hate it.
There you go.
Until it starts working. Okay.
No, yeah. And again, I'll go back to I am grateful for the corporate environment I work in. I have learned people manipulation skills that I never wanted. But it's just, again, it's never going to be the strongest
Yeah.
player.
Have you heard our podcast on subtypes, on the different career styles for INTPs?
Probably.
Okay.
If you haven't, you should listen to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would recommend it. So the concepts of subtypes is that there's actually 4 different styles of each of the personality types. And
Okay.
the creative and dominant INTP types have that more marketer style.
Oh, I remember it now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so if you have a more receptive, you might be a subtype that's more what's called normalizing or harmonizing. And if that's the case, it does kind of feel like a bit of a push to get into that other subtype.
Mhm.
But I still recommend, I recommend kind of playing around with it because that creative INTP space in particular, it can be really rewarding. Right. And it means getting excited about ideas. And here's the deal. It's not just manipulating or persuading other people. The way that it works where it doesn't take energy from you is you're excited first. So you're not just trying to convince somebody of something that you aren't 100% bought in on.
Mhm.
You are bought in on it. It is an exciting, carbonating idea to you. And so when other people get in your energy, they can't help but get excited about it. Right. So you're not just trying to manipulate, right? You're not just trying to get people to buy an idea. You're trying to get them to resonate with your excitement around it. And if you find positions that you think that will really facilitate my ability to be the best or the most me right now, let yourself get excited by the idea, right? Let yourself be like, this is cool. This is super cool. And then you get there and you're like, this is cool, right? You should totally hire me because it's super cool. And they're like, yeah, this is cool. We should do this, right? And then now you're in a better situation. So I'd try it out and see what
Okay.
happens. All right.
All right. I'll try.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Give
you.
her a hand. Now, who's next? Yeah, come on up. So I gotta keep rolling along here.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
What's your name?
My name is Katie.
Katie.
I am a native to Georgia. I am an ESFP. So I'm
Wow.
sort of the opposite from a lot of the presenters. And whereas I appreciate their comments, I almost have an opposite problem, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. My husband is an ENTP, so I really relate to Antonia.
Congratulations.
Yes. I'm an ESFP. We are actually in a really good place in our lives. We both have our own businesses and professional services. We have the house we want, the life we want. We've worked hard to get there. But being EPs, we tend to be chaotic. And so I know we were talking about stability and how the chaos scares other people. We tend to surf that chaos, if that makes sense. And we love it. And it does very well for us in our lives. And it's exciting. And I love my life. The issue is, you were talking about the Pygmalion Project, and I really appreciate that because we have children. And of course, when you have children, that becomes your number one priority in life. And I want my children to be just like you said with yours. I want them to be them. And I think we have the lack of grounding in our home. And I always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, am I doing damage to my children or am I giving them opportunities and giving them the life they want? And I think every mother sort of struggles with this.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be the Mr. Higgins in My Fair Lady where she's selling flowers, but I don't want to be the doctor where she's the belle of the ball. I want my child to be who they are. And so that's sort of my question is how do you foster authenticity and who your child truly is, but also by maintaining who I am as well. So I don't want to lose myself in motherhood. Yes.
Yeah.
Great questions.
Yeah.
And I wish more parents asked these questions.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. You're thinking about this. Your kids will probably thank you as they get older. I think it's good on you.
Yeah. How many children do you have?
We have 2 children.
2.
How old are they?
They are 7 and 5. And so their personalities are really starting to just show and who they are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's hard to type children. It really is.
Yes.
So first of all, just knowing personality types are a thing already puts you ahead of most other people. Because what ends up happening is I call it our egos want to take a ride with our genes. Right. So we have children and we pass along our genes and our egos are like, well, maybe I can get in there too. Right. And so we craft this childhood experience that's almost identical to ours. Right. And we make it so that they have all our same experiences and then they have different responses. And we're like, no, you're supposed to respond this way because that's how I responded. Right. And so we can't help but just kind of want to program ourselves into our kids. And one of the things that personality type does, particularly if you go, oh, you mean I have permission to be myself? It helps us give other people permission to be themselves as well. So just knowing it exists at all means you're going to be more sensitive to your children being different from you.
Yes.
Right? Having their own unique needs that are different from your needs. The need to have different experiences from yours, right? The need to be authentic in a way that's different than whatever authentic means for you.
Right.
Just that awareness already sets you apart from most other parents, right? It already gives you a leg up. Then if you get more specific, like I'm observing my kid and they seem to be going to their room a lot, and right, they seem to be escaping humans as opposed to moving towards them.
Yes.
That's really interesting. Maybe alone time is a need of theirs. So maybe I should respect and honor that, right? Like the house is chaotic, but there is a sanctuary for alone time, right? Or it seems to me that theirs is the only one that has a clean room, and look at how everything is ordered, and they're 5 years old, but they're still hanging up all of their clothes and they seem to be color coordinated. Okay, so right, it's like,
Right.
perhaps I have a little budding judger on my hands, right? And so, yeah, you're like, no, yes, maybe.
But the introvert, yes, my son does. He goes to his room and he just wants to play with his Legos. And I'm like, I feel like I need to interact with him because I'm an SE. So I'm like, we have to go experience and do something to bond. But no, he just wants to play with his Legos. And that's hard for me because I feel like I'm not doing what I need to do. And I'm inserting my ego maybe.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
and we all do it. So it's like, it's a very human thing to do, right? It's very natural. And so being sensitive to those and knowing what they means that you don't have to change your entire household. I mean, kids are resilient, and we all grew up in a household that maybe wasn't exactly the household we needed, right? I'm the only NP in my family. Everybody else was either an NJ or an SP. So I grew up in a very introverted intuition, extroverted sensing household. They didn't really understand my needs. And so what ended up happening is they just kind of let me take care of them on my own. And there was a little bit like, hey, am I not a person here too? But then I grew up and I was like, no, they were just trying to do the best with whatever they were working with. Right. And kids are resilient and we usually figure it out. So I grew up in that household and I turned out fine, right? But I mean, like, it's like none of us get the ideal. And in some ways it's kind of good, right? Because it introduces this whole other side. You see people who are the same personality type as their parents, who are the same personality type as their parents. And it's really easy for what's called one-sidedness to show up in that context. And so one-sidedness means that you're doubling down on your first two functions, right? Like that's all you know and that's all you want to do. And you don't ever try to balance yourself out. You never try to find the other side and you never try to like sort of round yourself out. You just go, no, this is how it works. And you just keep doing the same thing over and over. What happens when you grow up in a context that isn't suited for your personality type is you're sort of forced to visit the other side, right? And from my observation, it's an easier adult experience to find yourself and start building a life that's more authentic to you than to realize that you actually have to get out of your comfort zone and start doing a bunch of other stuff, right? That you just don't want to have to do. So there is something to be said if your children have type preferences very different than yours. What you're doing is you're introducing them to a wider variety of experiences and ways of being. And that's not a bad thing at all. So it's okay. You're not stifling them just because you're a different kind of person. You don't have to completely change your household just because one of your children might be a different type than you and your husband. So I think you're okay. But I just recommend making sure that you have, you give them sanctuary, right? If they are more introverted, they have an introverted sanctuary. If they are more of a judger, you allow them to have control over their room or control over something that makes them feel like, okay, I can relax. If they are like, take for example, maybe any kind of judger type, the thing that they're going to want to know in order to relax, particularly if they have IJ preferences, is what's coming next, right? So if they start going like, what's going to happen next? Like what's happening this week? And you're like, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out when we get there. Right. Yes. They might need a little bit more like, we're probably going to be doing this on Saturday. Right. We're probably going to, and what I've noticed about judgers is they're okay if things change. They just want to be able to prepare for the most likely scenario in the future.
Yes.
Right?
And our household is very much an improvised household and we thrive on that. So I think you're right. Absolutely. We need to give them that time to adjust.
Right.
Yes.
So control over their space, a place of sanctuary, a little bit of future pacing. And that might not be bad for you and your husband to do anyway, right? Just to kind of visit the other side.
We could try. We can. Well, it's hard because we had children later in life. So it's almost like we are set in this way and it's worked for us. And we're like, and kids make you shift gears, and, so maybe it's not a bad thing, but it's scary at least.
Yeah. And you don't have to like wildly alter everything. Just like kind of try to accommodate a little bit. And then you could even be honest and say, this is what I believe is going to be happening this weekend, but it's subject to change. Right. It might be different, but this is, and I think it's almost more the act of trying to prepare right? Because particularly IJ types just want to be able to prepare for what's coming up next, right? If they can. And they're okay with things changing a little bit and having to be flexible, but they want to feel like they're doing their best to ensure that when they get there, that's not completely out of what they thought was going to happen. So just like a little bit of accommodation. You might end up having two perceiver children and they don't give two craps. They're totally fine with being spontaneous. But if you do notice that one of your children is a little different or has a little bit of different needs, just go, what is like sort of the baseline? What's the, like I mentioned with the job, INTP preferences, it can't strip you of your nutrients. It can be neutral, but it can't strip you. So what is the minimum viable product that your kid needs, right? In order to not feel like you're stripping them of their nutrients. You're accommodating, you're allowing, you're giving them space for it. And I think if you do that, I don't think you're going to have to really worry about it that much.
Okay. Any tips for just grounding? Because that's obviously just personally and between me and my husband. Is there any other maybe advice you could give just for us? Because like you said, we need to develop it in ourselves. Is there anything that y'all might say work on or?
Yeah. So for having ENTP preferences myself, there is a lot to be said for having certain, well, we don't call them routines as much because we're two perceivers too. So we get it. We're two EPs. Our house is pretty chaotic as well. But we try not to think about things in terms of routines, but rhythms. We try to have rhythms, right? And so it's not like I do this thing at this time. It's more like I have a rhythm of generally in the morning, this is my, these are the things that I'm going to be doing. And these are the things. And so then it's just a matter, rituals, rhythms, just trying to be a bit consistent, even knowing that we're going to disrupt our own routines. We know that that's inevitable. But then just doing what we can to try to get back to it. My recommendation is for both of you to get kind of an idea of what your introverted intuition or perspectives 3-year-old in the car model, right? It's the opposite of your sensation. Yeah. It also has needs, right? A part of what we talk about when we say that things are throttles is not just our first two functions. Sometimes our lifestyle or family or the people in our lives prevent us from developing our third and fourth function. And that's just as damaging, right? So kind of get an idea of what that part of you needs to play with it, sort of build a relationship to it. In Jungian psychology, they talk about forming a relationship to your fourth function, your first and fourth functions. Robert Johnson, who is a Jungian analyst, he wrote a book in the 80s, I think it was called He, where he said that the relationship between those two functions should be like two hands pressed together, which I thought was really interesting. It's like an intimate relationship they have with each other, but they're not the same thing. So it's okay for that function to kind of feel a little distant from you, like a little like not you, right? Almost like a partnership, like an actual partnership with your husband. He's not you, but you're so intimate and close, you're like pressed together, but he's not you, right? And so it's when you first begin to integrate that fourth function, that inferior, or what we call the 3-year-old, it's okay to have it feel a little not you, a little distant initially, but you want to create a relationship to it, almost like you're creating a relationship with a friend. So if you had a friend that had INJ preferences, what are the kinds of things they'd be into? What are the things that they would like to do? And then maybe try to play around with it a little bit.
That's a good way to put it. I never thought that. Put my third and fourth as another person who I'm interacting with. I've never thought about it like that. I love that idea.
Yeah. Yes. And so just kind of do activities that you think that they would be interested in. Just play around with it, but don't feel like you have to live there.
Yes.
Just build a relationship to it and see if that alone has a grounding influence.
I love that idea. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, come on up. What's your name?
My name is Devon.
Devon, where are you from?
Born in Atlanta, raised in Mississippi, and now I'm back in Atlanta.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's a great city.
I love
I'm loving Atlanta. What's your best fit type preferences?
My preference is INFP.
Okay. So we're talking about stifling, restriction. What's coming up for you? What's your question?
So I wanted to kind of hone in on the point of growing up in a certain context, because as an INFP, I personally grew up under two thinking types. My mother was ESTJ and my father was INTP. And now as a husband and father, and my wife is here now with me, who is a fellow feeler. Figured that would go a little better. But it's just trying to understand and live in a way that I can be more comfortable with my FI, be more comfortable with what my hero is meant to be, and not so much living in I think what I would call a shadow of following my mother's TE hero or my father's TI and trying to blend those things together. So I was just wondering if you had any kind of advice around that.
Yeah. You might ask how old you are?
I'll be 33 next month.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So what I hear you asking is advice is it to give yourself permission or ways to really bring out your feeling function?
Yeah, I would say ways to bring it out because I would always, as an INFP, express it inwardly. My inner world is very, very vivid and very fun for me. But I guess it's being able to live outside with it, especially with my wife who's ENFJ. I see she wants to kind of experience that inner world as well. So I guess I would look for ways in which to express it and bring it out instead of keeping it in.
Yeah. Okay. So then if I'm patterning this correctly, you were raised with two thinking parents that weren't very friendly to you expressing your introverted feeling or authenticity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or at least not giving space to it. It's never really looked for it, I guess you could say.
And so you learned to keep it to yourself.
Sure.
Okay. And so now you're an adult and you're like, I can do whatever I want to. Right.
Right.
And I'm going to marry an ENFJ and we're going to be feelers together. Right.
That's right. Exactly.
And she's like, okay, so let's be feelers together. And you're like, right. Okay.
It's like, I know how to do little TE chores.
Right. Yeah. I guess I'll do the dishes.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
So are there any practices you have right now that really express your introverted feeling or authenticity?
Well, I'm an artist, kind of dabbling, drawing and trying to get into writing, especially writing, because I think that would be a good avenue for expressing those types of things. And I've actually, the few times I've written things and, people would read it, people actually responded really well to the thoughts I had and the expressions. So I guess it's just a matter of being in practice with it because I think it is so comfortable to just keep to myself. And when I'm disassociating or just in my own room by myself, just, I'm being me with me, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But
and that's all you really need. Right? Oh my goodness, as somebody with ENFJ preferences, when she's like, tell me how you're feeling. You're an INFP, you should know, right?
It's like, I know, but I don't know how to tell you all the time.
That's right, exactly, right. Yeah, how do I put it into language?
Right.
So I would say definitely keep with your practices of expression and don't marginalize them. Don't make them a nice to have or something that is just, this is a thing I do on the side. When it comes to introverted feeling or authenticity, figuring out ways to express it to almost create a time capsule. Like, the beautiful thing about introverted feeling or authenticity is that we call it asynchronous emotional communication as opposed to extroverted feeling or harmony, which is in the moment, right? It's two people vibing with each other and you're having a feeling back and forth.
Yeah.
Introverted feeling or authenticity can bind the emotion in like a time capsule and have it go through time, which is why we can watch or look at a piece of art from somebody who painted it 200 years ago and still have an emotion evoked inside of us because they sent a message from the past. They had an expression of emotion and they put it into this, and then we observe it and then we get an expression of emotion, and it's totally okay if it's not the same one, right? They were happy to be able to express what was going on for them and have some form of communication that will strike something in another person. It doesn't have to be the same one, right? And so it's an emotional communication over time. This is one of the reasons why it's totally fine for you to have your emotion all by yourself, because it's not real time. It doesn't have to be in the moment with another person vibing with them. Yeah. You can just have it and then put it in a time capsule and then go away and throw it into almost like throwing it into an ocean as a message in a bottle. And maybe someday somebody will get it, right?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. But if your wife has ENFJ preferences, her feeling is super in the moment, right? It's like in the moment, real time, vibing, and the way that that function understands emotions is by connecting, right?
Yeah.
She understands. I'm assuming I'm going to speak for you, right, based on your type preferences. So tell me if I'm off, right? But she knows what she's feeling when she's telling you, and you're telling her, right? In the conversation, that's where the emotions like start to become clear, when it's being articulated, when it's being understood in real time. So part of the let's feel together is you actually have almost diametrically opposed to feeling styles, which should be taken into consideration, right? It doesn't mean they're incompatible at all. It just means that they have a very different way of showing up. So a piece of this is meeting each other halfway, right? Going, it's hard for me to fully express my emotions because they're so deep and complex, but I will try.
Yeah.
Okay. I will try to put language to them. And if she has ENFJ preferences, the nice thing is that she'll have introverted intuition or perspectives as her co-pilot. So she'll kind of be modeling it and kind of like, is it kind of like this or what's going on over here? Right.
I see it in real time sometimes.
She probably is more articulate about your emotions than you are.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a feature, not a bug.
Right.
Yeah, and what's going to happen for you, by the way, is that you're going to want to process your emotions like alone or not with people, right? You're going to want to go and actually process these yourself, work on them, and find out what's resonant with you. So, I mean, I'm ENFP preferences.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes for me to be. I often know what I'm feeling, but I need to express it through performance or some other avenue than articulation. Like the articulation, I have to like go around and find it and all of this. So.
Sure.
I mean, one of the things that's coming up for me is, are there other ways to express emotion when you're in the dynamic with your wife that doesn't include articulation specifically? Have you guys tried these things? Like, I mean, that's weird to ask, but like, you know, like other ways of expressing, I mean, you could pull her in for a kiss,
Maybe,
you know, that could, but the point is, I mean, like other ways of expressing yourself. Have you thought of this?
Maybe slight touch on the shoulder, things like that. But typically, I would try to improve the verbal communication of it, or what she even suggested is, hey, like, stop the chaos, take time, say I need 5 minutes, that kind of a thing to process and then come back. But no, I haven't really explored outside of just verbal communication.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you want to play with that.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of feels weird at first to do it.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, there's ways to basically, like sometimes when I'm trying to communicate an idea and I'm having a hard time articulating it, I'll actually stand up and I'll be like, all right, I'll pretend like I'm this person that's acting this out. And I'll say that to somebody like even Antonia, but like, I'm going to embody this for a second. I'm not coming against you. I'm not actually believing this. I just almost need to perform it. And I get in a state, I get angry. I try to find the emotion expression, almost like I'm play acting, and I let the person know ahead of time.
Yeah.
I'll let Antonia know because otherwise I learned this the hard way. I started doing that without letting her know. And she actually thought I was in that emotion or that expression.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because it was like, sometimes for me, I don't know how to get the emotion out until I start just emoting. Oh, that's not it. Oh, that's not it. Oh, that's not it. And I'll actually go through play acting with myself in front of other people to figure out what I'm feeling.
Oh.
I don't know. I mean, mileage might vary. I don't know.
I'm willing to try it for sure. So I like acting.
You know what I think we should do?
Yeah.
I think we should have you go sit down and bring your wife up here since she's here with you. Ask her about her side of it too. What do you think?
Well, you can stay.
You can stay. Actually, yeah, you can stay up here with us. Yeah. Well, give her a hand, everyone. Come on up. I hope you were willing to come up. What's your name?
Absolutely. Anything to help.
What's your name?
FP Hero. Latasia.
Latasia, and obviously
Latasia.
you have ENFJ preferences.
Yes,
You're
ENFJ.
from Atlanta, Georgia originally too?
Yeah. Well, no, originally from New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we moved to Atlanta together, actually. So
You married a
to
Southern
get married.
guy.
Yeah. So
Cool.
there you go.
All right. So from your perspective, what's going on?
Well, one thing that I thought I could point out that would really kind of like tie this whole throttle thing together is that we both actually grew up under STJ parents or STJ mothers to be specific. So, and my mother happens to live with us now. So it's really interesting, just our dynamic and like how I see in real time us kind of going through this like process where we are growing and coming into ourselves and everything like that and figuring out who we are, just not under that kind of shadow of, that extra developed TI for me, TE for him, and everything has to have an order. And, we have a 2.5-year-old son and seeing my mom interact with him. And it's like, oh, this is when you can't get up from the table and eat your food over here. You have to sit at the table and this is the order and this is how it goes and this is how we do it. And, going to visit his mom and she's an ESTJ and she's like, don't run in the house. And we're like, let him be as long as he's not hurting himself or anyone else. Like, let him find himself and grow and bang and, figure it out. But all of that is to say that we did grow up under that, and we were the ones hearing that at some point. And so that kind of like stifled us. And, you know, I noticed before getting married that or I can't say we, I'll say me. He had his own life before we got married, but that the way it expressed itself in me is that like, I'm the only extroverted feeler in my house. I have 3 siblings that I grew up with in the house and my mom. And I wanted to kumbaya and let's all sit and watch a movie or do something together. And that's not their jam, you know, respectfully. But
only extrovert.
Yeah, I'm the only extrovert, and only intuitive. Anyway, you can almost go down my whole stack, and I'm almost all of them. The only person in my house that had those functions or preferred those functions. So all that's to say that, yeah, I know how it I pulled back. I wasn't running up to say hello to the people that I wanted to go and say hi to in the streets because, we don't do that, and it's not proper and you look desperate or whatever it may be, and just like different ways that it manifested and the way that I kind of grew and looked forward to marrying someone where I could be myself. And that was kind of how I coped a little bit too. And like you said, now you're in it and it's like, be a feeler and open up. And it's like, oh, wait. And we're going through it together though. We're like, coaching each other almost, where it's like, hey, you know that I'm a safe place. And this is me talking. I'm a safe place, and come and do all the feeling things that I always imagined. And I can see that he wants to, and, we both, because I have my qualms with it as well, but like that we both kind of like pull back and push in and pull back. And I think we even have on our mirror written, for me, always lean in lipstick as a reminder for him. Those are the little things that I've tried. I'm going to wrap it up, but just to add one more thing too, is that I notice it showing up in him that everything is TE almost. It's like he does try other things. He'll do the dishes. I'm pregnant now, and he'll, get me as many waters as I want. And, he's really into
What do you need from CVS tonight?
Exactly. He'll run out at 1:30 a.m. and all of that. Like everything is very practical. And I want the poems, my love language, even words of affirmation and quality time. And I want the poems and everything. And he did that. And he continues to do it. I just see the struggle. Yeah. So it's not a question. I mean, you kind of brought me up, but like it's really like a full circle thing that we're seeing in each other's lives dynamically, in and out. We'll grow, and then we have a struggle period and grow, and it's just our lives kind of interesting.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's lovely. So I suspect you're gonna be fine. No, seriously. And here's just a couple little comments to make the trip a little easier, because I think that this road that you're going down together, I think you clearly are so supportive and so delighted to have found each other that I think you're gonna be just fine. ENFJs move at a faster pace than INFPs. So it takes a little longer for an INFP to kind of, especially if they've had to really, sort of, I don't know, like, I don't want to use the word ice themselves, but like it takes a little while to thaw, okay? And to realize this is a new norm. You're using extroverted sensing or sensation. That's a function that turns on a dime. Okay, even though it's your 10-year-old or tertiary, it's still very fast moving. It's like all you needed was clarity and you're off to the races. Introverted sensing or memory, which is your 10-year-old or tertiary function, it takes time to acclimate. It takes a little bit, to just kind of go, oh, this is the new norm, and get used to it. So your pace is just going to be faster, but I think you're going to be okay. The poems and all of that made me think, and this is something you could consider, right? But it has to be authentic to you, I understand. Right. So one of the things that Joel started doing, and you didn't mention, you're like, have you tried other expressions? But you didn't give a specific, so I'm going to do that now.
Please do.
Okay. Every once in a while, I open up a book I'm reading, and the bookmark is a love note from Joel. Aww. Right? Or I'll open up my makeup drawer, and there's a little note from Joel, and they're really short. They're just like, I'm delighted to have you in my life. Or I know, right? Brownie points. I wish I was more of an FJ because I'd be like, oh, and so I'm like, that's cool. Right?
Give me a fist bump.
That's right. Cool. Good job, right? Way to know. Right. So I don't do the right, but I'm like, yeah, cred, man, that's awesome. So, but there's little things like that. It's like basically what it is give yourself permission that when you feel it, write it down. Right. And then
that's the trick.
Yeah.
That's actually the trick.
Yeah.
I don't do it when I don't feel it or think about it. When I think about it, I take action immediately. Thank you for saying that.
And he's smart. He batches it. So when he feels that way, he writes like 7 of them, right? And then he hides them over time. And it feels like he's doing it all the time, but I'm pretty sure he's batching the work, right? But it's smart. It's super smart, right? I got to give him props. So it's like when you feel it, just give yourself permission to write something down really quick and just sort of leave it, right? It doesn't, and it can be. So that's the message in a bottle. That's the asynchronous part. It didn't have to be said in the moment, but it was said and left for her to discover. And that's kind of more of an introverted feeling way of doing it anyway.
And she loves those mementos anyway. She collects everything I've written and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a perfect idea.
So little things like that are okay. So when she goes, what are you feeling? You're like, right? That's okay, right? She'll be patient. She'll be like, is it this? Is it this? I'll put all this language to it, right? And you're like, yeah, it actually is kind of like that.
Right.
That's fine. You're not failing, okay? And over time, you'll probably pick up some stuff. And then you'll get a little better at identifying and articulating the specific things. But just be patient. Give yourself time. I have a feeling you're giving him time, right? Yeah. And I would just do those little things, those little when you're thinking about it, when it's authentic for you. Leave a message in a bottle for her to discover.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right.
Thank you. And
Give
congratulations.
us their billing address for the counseling.
Thank you guys. All right. Thanks everybody for being with us live tonight. This is awesome to have you all here. If you're listening or watching at home and you weren't here live in the studio audience, you couldn't come up to this microphone we had, but we still want to hear from you. Come over to personalityhacker.com and under this episode, leave a comment, ask a question, or more importantly, share your story. That's right. Okay, so I've said it before. Good. I was just testing to see if it was. Share your story because stories are compressed experiences. I want to hear from you and understand what's going on in your world, what's coming up for you as you think about repression, bringing yourself out in your full expressed self in the world, bringing things alive for your personality. We want to hear from you. So come over to personalityhacker.com and make your voice heard.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can subscribe to us on iTunes and various Android platforms. If you leave a rating and review on iTunes, it helps us out a lot. We have a book. It's called Personality Hacker. You can get it at all major book retailers. I've got to say this whole thing, it's autopilot now. If you leave us a rating and review on Amazon or on Goodreads, that also helps us out a lot. You might be watching us on YouTube right now because we also have a video podcast and you got to see all the lovely faces of the people who were here live. So thank you very much for coming. And perhaps you can also come to a future live podcast. I highly recommend it. It's a fun time. You'll get to see all of Joel's weird behind the scenes stuff. You get to see how the soup is made. All right. And so head over to personalityhacker.com and check out when those live podcasts happen. And if you were watching us on YouTube, you can leave a comment and you can also subscribe and hit the bell for when the new episodes come out. You get a ding, I think. I think that's how it works, right?
Yeah. All right. So coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia with an amazing studio audience. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker podcast.
Hey, it's Joel from Personality Hacker. So a big reason people get into personality types is usually to improve their relationships with other people. And you can understand key differences between you and someone else when you understand how type works. So clearly, personality type is applied to relationships. But what about the relationship with yourself? Well, personality type can also help you navigate your career, or maybe an educational path that you need to follow, or other opportunities that present themselves, and it helps you know which are the right choice for you. And ultimately, personality is the key to unlocking identity-level worldview and life purpose. It all starts with getting the owner's manual for your personality type. In this owner's manual, we cover the basics of your personality. And then we dive a layer deeper to connect your personality to your relationships, your career, your worldview, and identity, because we believe it's your life and it should be designed for your personality. So start your owner's manual journey at personalityhacker.com. When you access your owner's manual, I recommend focusing on the ideal day exercise first, because when you start crafting your ideal day, you're being mindful about the type of lifestyle that you want. So designing a life around how you're naturally wired makes sense, and you can finally stop fighting yourself. So come discover and develop your unique personality at personalityhacker.com.